Hey everyone, I am Steve Van Diest. I am the co-host of the Sharpen Podcast. Acumen is a CEO, entrepreneurial business leadership peer community that are folks that want to grow in their top line, optimize their bottom line, and enrich their storyline. And I often say it's not for people that are arrogant. I can do it on my own. I've got all the answers and I don't need any help. And so it's the opposite of that. It's people that want to grow, but they want to do it in community and they know they've got blind spots. And today I'm excited. We're talking to a good friend of mine, someone that is full of wisdom, full of experiences, one of the more humble, vulnerable people I know. And we're going to talk about money and wealth and wisdom and experiences. Shane, tell us who you are, what you do, and why I'm having you talk about these issues.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Steve. Shane Bauman, from Colorado, lived here my whole life. Grew up in a very rural community, which taught me grit and grind and what it's like to work in blue collar manual labor jobs. Been married to my wife for 25 years, Jenny Bauman. We live in Franktown. We have 3 grown kids, so we're empty nesters. We've married off one of those kids. The other 2 are working on it right now. And I think that I've been an advisor for 15 years. I will say any advisor that says they've got it all figured out financially is probably lying to you. I think we're all a work in progress, and it's just an interesting and awesome journey to help other people navigate the psychology associated with money, their relationship with money, how past traumas have impacted how they, address how they manage their money. And most importantly, our goal is to help clients become good stewards with their money, aligning their purpose and their wealth, which is oftentimes not the case. Most people know they have a purpose, a calling, something that God is drawing them towards, and in many cases their money and their wealth. And wealth is actually a broader term than money specifically. We can talk about that if you want. Making sure there's alignment there is important, and we think we're uniquely positioned to do that because there's not a lot of people in our industry, we feel, that look at purpose and wealth and try and get alignment.
I love that, purpose, wealth. But before we talk about that, what were some defining moments in your life that made you into this wise sage that I would consider wise? It's got a lot of experiences. Were there any defining moments that really pivoted and changed you?
Boy, that is I would say actually my relationship with addiction has largely shaped that, because I am a very addictive person. And once I learned to be vulnerable and real about where I was, there was something insanely liberating that happened as I engaged in that, as I heard God telling me to just be real about where I am in all facets of life. Can be a scary endeavor for a lot of us that I think kind of hold up this facade of who we think the world wants us to be versus who we really are. And it's funny, there's a movie called 8 Mile with Eminem, very secular movie.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies. But one of the most powerful scenes in that movie to me is at the very end. Eminem is in a rap battle. It's a freestyle battle. And the way that those battles work is it's basically like a cut down war that you're rhyming to. Well, Eminem in the final battle actually lays out everything that's flawed about himself and takes away the power of the guy that's trying to rap against him and just leaves the guy dumbfounded. I feel like that's the thing that I've learned most, is just to be humble and real and vulnerable about where I am. And the wisdom has come in just sharing that and then hearing other people share the same, and then just letting the Holy Spirit lead in a way that's hopefully profound and impactful for people.
Yeah, I think that's why you're a great member of the Acumen Momentum team out here in the Front Range in Colorado. And now I know we can call you the real Slim Shady. And so
Shady, yes. I don't know that anybody would call me Slim.
Well, let's get into, I have a general sense of why people come to you, but why do you think people come to you?
I think because of what I just described. I think that we're authentic and we're real, and we get the cards on the table. And speaking of the table, we like to sit on the same side of the table as our clients and say, hey, we're an advocate and an ally. We're not a vendor. If you're looking for somebody to just maximize the return in your portfolio or make some other insert tactical decision here that people are accustomed to in our space, that's not who we are. We want to engage people and understand, what is it you're trying to accomplish? Do you have full visibility into what you're doing in your financial world? And are we addressing as many of the facets of your financial world as we possibly can? Not just your portfolio, not just your insurance coverage, but how are you managing your cash flow? How are you looking at liquidity? How are you looking at debt? Do you have a personal cash flow statement? Has anyone ever developed that for you? What is your relationship with giving? I mean, we're looking at all of the pieces and saying, how do we make sure that when we make a decision, albeit maybe a tactical decision, how is that impacting all these other decisions in your life? Tax strategy, giving, income, future plans. Like we want to make sure that we're engaging all of that and being an ally instead of a vendor. And so that's a hard distinction for some people, because they just want somebody that's like, hey, just give me advice. I want to get the best return on the market possible. We quickly identify that we're not the right fit for them. We are the right fit for somebody who wants to do life together and say, hey, I need a strategic ally that's going to come alongside myself, my spouse, my business partner in a way that's meaningful and will do it long term with us.
It's interesting. I think your real and authenticity is why people come to you. And in that relationship and that vulnerability and that realness, we're forced to go, wait, and you used this term earlier, relationship with money, relationship with wealth. Maybe even more so relationship with money. I don't think people realize they have a relationship with money. What did you have to unlearn about in your relationship with money and the progression? And maybe that parlays then into, what do business owners, entrepreneurs have to unlearn or retool when they think of, maybe the first step is just thinking about, you have a relationship with money. It can be healthy, it can be dysfunctional, it can be addictive. It's just like a relationship with anything. Tell me more about some of the unlearnings and what kind of the process around money have you learned, and now it's turned into sharing that wisdom with entrepreneurs.
So I think what I really had to unlearn, and what I have to help a lot of people unlearn, is the shame associated with their money. I don't care if you are insanely wealthy or you are barely getting by. I would say 95% of the time I hear, I should have done this. I wish I would have done this. And people are bringing their I know I could have done and should have done it better. And it's unlearning that and going, look, there's no shame. You are where you are. You weren't taught this stuff in school. I don't care if you've been to the upper echelons of a PhD. They don't teach personal finance in a meaningful way in very many places. They probably exist somewhere, but it's very rare. Our parents likely didn't teach us much about money. And so it's unlearning the shame of, oh my gosh, I should be giving more, and I should be invested in, or my portfolio should be larger, and I shouldn't be in this debt, and blah, 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 blah. It's all of those things. And just slowing down and saying, okay, first of all, let's figure out how to ditch the shame associated with the decisions that you've made. And you are where you are, and that's okay. You are where you are. There's no judgment. It's like going to a doctor. A good doctor is not going to go, oh, I've never seen anything like that. Whoa, check out this mole on this guy's back, and pulls in the whole staff. We don't want there to be any shame, because if we can get rid of that shame and just get real and say, look, you're not happy with the decisions you've made up to this point, that's okay. And now we're going to look at where you are and say, how do we make decisions differently? How do we engage the psychology of why you do what you do, where you're trying to fill some void in many cases you go shopping and you just can't explain why all of a sudden you spend a bunch of money and you put it on a credit card. There's no shame in that. Let's slow down and figure out, why are we making the decisions that we're making? What hole is that filling? And is there a way for us to have somebody like a financial trainer that's coming alongside you to go, hey, you've made these decisions before. It doesn't mean you have to continue to make those decisions. Let's at least be able to pause and say, look, I have a relationship with these guys because they're going to help me pause before I keep living out these patterns of behavior that haven't been serving me well.
It's almost like you were sitting in, my wife and I have this speakeasy lounge, that you were sitting watching us talk last week about an investment we made probably about 10 years ago that went sour. And there is this piece of, shame. And at times you go, well, what if I had done this in my 20s? And my wife and I were full-time missionaries around the world. And so we weren't building income or retirement. We were out traveling the world and preaching and sharing the gospel. So there's sometimes even this, well, what if we had started earlier? I like that you're talking about the shame, because I know people that have all different, we coach in the acumen world, people from all different income levels. And you're exactly right. That shame is only a robber of joy and a robber of what you're doing. So the fact that you can sit in a room with somebody and say, okay, let's clear the table. There's no shame. Yep. I think that's a huge start for an entrepreneur, because I think entrepreneurs and business owners and CEOs are really hard on themselves.
Definitely.
And the ones maybe the ones that I'm surrounded by in the acumen community, I see that they're hard on themselves because they're actually involved in a community where they're willing to say, do I have blind spots? But they're willing to grow. And I think we can help each other remove that shame. A lot of that relationship with money and investments and growth and how we're doing that. Now we can start thinking wisely. And having someone like you in their back pocket is profound. You've mentioned a couple words in there. In your opinion, what's the difference between building wealth versus building a life? And I've been battling in my mind and kind of ruminating the last 2 or 3 weeks this idea of a legacy versus a heritage, or a
Hmm.
legacy versus it's like there's a lot of terms I just threw out there. Can you riff on some of that stuff there? Wealth and life and legacy and inheritance, or even a heritage.
Well, so I think wealth, that term, I know wealth gets tossed around a lot because it sounds good. Like wealth management became very kind of front and center, and it's been so overused at this point that it's almost lost its meaning. But wealth, only part of that is money. So we talk about life. Wealth is wellness, and it should touch every facet of your life. I mean, that is your spiritual walk. That is how you take care of your body. That's how you take care of your finances. That's your relationships. Wealth is a sense of wellness. If I think of like wealth the way that it should be, the word that comes to mind is shalom, because shalom is more than peace. It's a sense of wholeness. And when we can help people live in that sense of wholeness, their money is often just a symptom, and a painful symptom of a lot of other things, but it's helping people realize that money is part of wealth. And to me, wealth and a full life are kind of similar. I mean, if you're engaging true wealth, that's living a life. If you're only focused on money and how to make money, that's not true wealth. That's not living a life.
And you're actually, so I had a question written down. I'm like, hey, have you ever met anybody that's achieved that they've won the game of money? They've won the game of financial services or financial achievement, yet they've lost spiritually, emotionally, relationally. And almost a rhetorical question. Where do you think that started?
Well, I think it's very ingrained in our society that success is kind of a one-trick pony, and that one-trick pony is he with the most money wins, and at all costs. Like I think unfortunately, there's a lot of prevalent voices out there that say, hey, it's all about sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice your family. You're going to have to sacrifice partnerships. Whatever it is, it's sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice at the expense with the ultimate outcome being I have a ton of money. I don't think that's true wealth. And so that's the problem, is like I think that is so ingrained in our culture, and we're such a consumerism driven culture that you look at any commercial, especially car commercials, it seems like it is all about status. Very few car commercials are like, hey, this is, unless it's Honda or Toyota, they're not about efficiency. They're about, hey, you're going to look great because you're driving a new Lexus or you're driving a new Audi, and it's all about that. And it's crazy to me what a car payment looks like to be able, even a lease. Sometimes you're looking at like a $1,200 lease so you can look good. Like it's just craziness to me.
Well, it's a conversation. This makes me go back 2 years ago. I had a member of Acumen, and we processed for a while of how to break up with a business partner, sell the business, and kind of do what's wise. It was really done well. I feel like they honored each other, but as part of that, they had to sell some land. And I remember sitting on a tailgate one day, and him kind of shaming himself. So that's the first warning. Woe is me, because I feel like I failed, especially Proverbs 13:22, if you're familiar. And I've seen this used as Christian wealth agencies as a proof text of why you're supposed to make a ton of money. And it says something of the fact is a righteous man leaves an inheritance to his children's children,
Yep.
and the wicked man leaves an inheritance to the righteous. And I think there's too many misaligned. It's all about the inheritance or the money portion to your children, but it's really comparing righteousness and wicked. And inheritance, flesh out what you think that inheritance, I think you already alluded to it before. It's probably very similar to that concept of wealth. But he felt bad. He goes, I'm not leaving 800 acres to my children. And I feel like I failed this verse.
Right.
how would you speak to the business owner that maybe is misapplying that passage?
Well, I think I'm gonna kind of sidestep that for just a minute, because so what happens relative to intergenerational wealth, and this is a real challenge. I have friends that are operating in a fiduciary capacity, and they're working with these multi-generational wealthy families. And what happens is one generation passes this wealth or money, mostly money and assets, to the next generation. The generation after that, as they get further and further removed from how that money or those assets were created, unfortunately they lose their way and they stop, in many cases, becoming productive members of society. And so inheritance is not just the cash, but it's the life lessons, it's the truth that we're helping our kids and our kids' understand. It's values that we're passing down from generation to generation. And the money is a tool to be used to maybe further those things. But if we're not careful and we're not intentional, inheritance, if it's just about money, can actually be a curse, I think. And there's actually statistics out there to prove it. I've talked to a lot of estate attorneys that say that most people that have an inheritance consider it more of a burden than a blessing. That is telltale.
Yeah. And
That is telltale.
And there's probably a lie in there tied into the earlier phrase you said. When there's shame, you feel like you're not leaving enough cash, or you didn't buy
Right.
it. Especially in this economy, I didn't leave. And both you and we're empty nesters.
Right.
I didn't leave my children $500,000 to go buy a house in the Denver metro area, which is barely get you
Right.
a starter
Right.
home. Barely get it
Right.
gets you a shack. And
Right.
so, there's that shame piece. But I have to remind myself there's a lie that culture says about financial services, about financial wealth, about legacy, maybe, instead of, wait, my inheritance is actually when my kids were all over here, my daughter flew in town, she just graduated, and there's an enjoyment, there's almost a holy worship to say they're pursuing the Lord, they're pursuing careers, they still want to be active members, they're not lazy, they have a kingdom mindset of production. I've got an entrepreneur son, I've got another one that's a CPA, my daughter's jumped into the workforce.
There's an inheritance right there. How awesome is that?
Yeah, and then my youngest son, who's probably academically the most brilliant person we know, went away from finance, econ, and pre-med, says, I feel like God's calling me to be a nurse. And I don't actually, and so there's this piece of an inheritance that they're actually talking to each other. They call us when they ask for advice. So how would you, using all these kind of anecdotal stories that we've talked about, what would be some of the greatest wisdom to the entrepreneur? And you're on an entrepreneur team in Acumen, and then there's these larger companies that are CEOs and owners of larger companies, 10, 30, 40, $100 million companies. And then just the mom and pop that are listening to this, that maybe they don't own a business, and because they're some of your clients as well. How would you summarize this to say, this is what you should be thinking about your relationship with money, inheritance, and wealth? What are kind of the final, how would you start the beginning package? I know shame was part of it, but what would be some of the final pieces to say, this is what I think you should do and think about?
I think you need to be thinking about how do you pass down what's truly important, and that is the core values that you want your children. You want to pass those on while you're still alive. So money's part of that, right? We think about that. And I mean, in many cases, as we're thinking about the money, we have to pass it in a way that protects them from themselves in a lot of ways. Like put some guardrails on it in a way that, and there's a lot of different ways you can structure that. But I really think you got to focus on the core values. That's the most important thing you can pass down to your kids, because, you know, the things, the intangibles that your kids learned being around you, Steve Van Diest, to be entrepreneurial, to take risks, to do the thing they're called to do instead of the thing they should do, that is huge. Like if your son, who could have done all these other things and he decided he wanted to be a nurse because that's what he was called to, that is a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing. In our society, like I don't ever want to be the dad that's like, you should be an engineer, or you should be an attorney, or you should be this because that's, you know, blah, 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 blah. I mean, my daughter was a PA. She was a physician's assistant. She was on that path. Brilliant. This doctor wanted her to be her successor, like doted all over her. And every day there were some things that they were doing in Western medicine that she couldn't align with. And she said, Dad, every day I have stress and anxiety because I feel like I'm not being true to who I am. I said, then don't do it.
Amen.
I would rather you do that and know that now And to me, that's an inheritance, that's legacy, and I'm not doing it perfect. I've screwed so many things up.
Yep.
But if I can pass that down to my kids and I can show them how to steward their money, to me, that's a much better inheritance. I also want to say one thing, because you touched on something. I want to kind of pivot back to it. You talked about how there's this shame of passing down. I didn't pass down enough. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. Do you know how often people feel shame when they actually get an inheritance because they don't feel like they earned it? And it may not be spoken. But they're carrying it around going, I didn't do anything to earn this money. And so something to think about as you're passing it down. Like these are conversations that you need to have early on. If there is going to be an inheritance, let's not shy away from it. Let's not let it be a surprise, and let's have tough conversations around, like, this is what's really important. While this money can be a blessing to you, it can be a start in a business or whatever the case may be. Let's not lose sight of what's important. And I don't want this to feel like you didn't earn it. This is me blessing you, and this is a way that I want to bless you and your kids and your kids' kids in a way that's meaningful, but that's only part of it.
Dude, solid. I think one of the greatest compliments I could give is I am grateful my older son is on an Acumen team with you, because I think you will bless my son. You will help mentor him. You will help coach him. You will help poke holes in him. You'll inspire him. So having you in the room is special. So I appreciate it. How are you personally staying challenged, sharpened, and inspired?
Dude, I was just talking to some guys this morning. I hope this answers the question. I heard somebody tell me a while back that he said the closer I get to God, the more I realize the distance between he and I. And that is an endless pursuit of the Father. He's an endless pursuit of me, but I'm just like, I am still ridiculously broken. I still carry trauma that I thought I healed from. And I'd say the way I have to stay sharp is I can't ever lose sight of that. I can't ever let worldly success or insert answer here take the place of my relationship with the Father and following the Father and realizing that my true identity is being a son. And this is a constant battle for me because of past traumas, my desire to perform, what I think is really valuable and what the world says is valuable. To stay sharp, I have to stay engaged in a community like Acumen and other communities where I have men who are challenging me and calling me on my BS. And I have to actively be pursuing the Lord, or I'm in a lot of trouble, because with too much power, too much success, and no accountability, I'm in a lot of trouble. And I think every man is, if they don't have that kind and woman have those things around them.
Well, I appreciate you. You lead with vulnerability and authenticity. And so if your clients are afraid of that, they probably shouldn't call you.
No.
But you will help.
Or maybe they should. Because, so like, here's the thing. Like, if you are afraid of it, I would say that's probably the thing you need to face up to. I pay attention to anything that I'm afraid of. If I'm afraid of it, there's probably something underneath that, and there's a lot of freedom on the other side of pressing into that fear or that discomfort.
Yeah, and then stewardship. We didn't even touch on stewardship much, but we did talk about wealth and inheritance, and that's really stewarding the souls of the people that we influence. Could be even if God doesn't have you have kids or married, the impact on people's lives, because you're probably not leaving your money to a non-family member, but the inheritance and the impact on those lives is parallel to leaving it on our kids. And so I really want my staff, my employees to be thinking about money, inheritance, values, wisdom, the same way I am. And so I appreciate you. Want to know where we can find you, because if you're not a kid of the 90s, you wouldn't have any idea where to find Slim Shady. But where would we find Shane Bauman in the interwebs? Shane Bauman. Yeah, where would we find you?
So you can go to risewealth.org. That's our website. I am on LinkedIn. If you just look up Shane Bauman, you'll find me there. I have a podcast called Building the Biz, B-I-Z. That's on Spotify, Apple, all the major platforms. So those are all the places you can find me. If you want to email me, my contact info should be on LinkedIn as well as the website. Those are probably the best ways to find me and track me down. Or just show up at the Monk and Mongoose on High Note a few times a week. You might see me there. A little plug to my daughter.
Exactly. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your wisdom, your impact on our Acumen community. If you are floating around there in Kansas City and St. Louis and Wichita and Arizona and the Front Range, and you're going, I want to be in a community surrounded by people like Shane, you got to come and check out, hey, what is Acumen? Visit www.acumenimpact.com and click on the tabs, search, watch a video, see some before and afters, or even reach out to some people that you know. If you know Shane, go, why is this good for me? And so appreciate you, brother. Thank you for sharpening us all.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me on. And I got to give a shameless plug to Acumen to say, to your point, if it's something you're afraid of, it's probably something that's holding you back in your business. Jumping into a community where it's asked of you to be vulnerable and real is probably the most profound thing that will happen in your business. So shout out to Acumen and the community. It's been huge for me.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, thanks, brother.
Shane Bauman is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Securities products and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Rise is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS or Guardian. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by PAS, Guardian, or Rise, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. 89816668.1. Expires 6/28.